So, Glenn, tell us a little bit about that spot. What is that all about?
Well, one of the things that we did, we had this idea for a class on disasters, catastrophes, and how human beings behave in those kind of situations.
Known as My Life, yes?
Yeah. Yes, I've heard about a few of your recent disasters.
Yes.
And we wanted to have an online simulation where we would actually put students into a catastrophe or an apocalyptic type of situation. Mm-hmm. And rather than using a volcano or a hurricane or tsunami, we decided to use something from popular culture, zombies. And we had the idea that we would create a promotional trailer for the course.
Yes.
And that's a little bit of what you heard was the soundtrack from that trailer.
And the reason that you took that approach, why did you think that dynamic would be particularly good with college kids?
Well, here's one of the things. I think that education, is a product like other things. And you might have the greatest kind of content as a teacher or an instructor. But what is going to cause some students to want to come into your class and, so to speak, like with a good book, turn the page?
Yeah.
So we wanted to aggressively market this course like a product. And we saw that young people now are using social media, very visually oriented, things quick and fast and getting their attention. And to bring them in, then to hear some of the great content that we actually have within it.
And by using something like that, it really sort of frees you up and you can go out of the box and you can do all sorts of creative things. I know you had one of my students, Casey Pelton Hull, who was a great photographer. And he came out, and who did he photograph?
Yeah, well, Keesa, I'd like to bring you in this. Keesa's part of the Z team here. She's an extraordinary instructional designer.
Hello.
And she'll tell you a little bit about that part of the marketing campaign.
Okay, well, we took a rather movie style approach when it came to marketing our course. We wanted to create something new, and we knew we had something here, but we wanted to create like a course trailer, like we did the first ever course trailer. So we used those type of movie style elements mixed with pop culture, and we created a buzz surrounding the course with this trailer. And from the trailer, we also started tweeting, and we utilized Facebook. We also did a vivid marketing campaign with the zombie.
That's tell them about that.
The zombie walkabout. This was great. We did a great zombie walkabout, and we took a student and we made him up like a zombie, and he had this sandwich board that illustrated how you can register and the site, and we gave out posters for the course.
Made up to look zombie-ish.
Oh,
in the extreme,
yeah.
Yes.
It was really funny and amazing because the students started doing self-promotion for us. They were taking pictures, tweeting them out, sending them Facebook like, hey, here's Zed the zombie. But it also helped create an extra buzz because our website was on the zombie. It was all about the course. So it added some fun, some pop culture. It was a great vehicle to use, and the students, I think they loved it.
And this was, I just want to mention for the record that Zed was a Canadian zombie. They're a little politer. We don't want to scare the students.
So you didn't actually bite into anybody? You're telling me?
A brain or two?
No.
And it was some parents that were a little bit startled.
It happened to be one of the days that there were parental tours at MSU, so we did
and they were like, what?
get into a little bit of a...
Well, one of the challenges that you had was also the original day you were going to do this was the day they were doing the groundbreaking for the Frib, and they were afraid that you were going to have your zombie walk through when they were turning over shovelfuls of dirt.
We were officially contacted and asked, not to go that day with what we were planning, because they wanted the attention to, be focused on the Frib, and we understood.
Trust
that.
me, the zombie is an attention getter. I don't care how much dirt turning you're going to do. I mean, no groundbreaking is going to hold a candle.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was looking, because this is an elective class in the summer, and there's a lot of competition, for students, and getting their attention, and I got some of the best teaching advice ever, actually from my grandson, when I was trying to figure out what to have. And he said to me, Gramps, just don't be boring. And one thing zombies are not is boring.
They're
Well, you
not
know-
predictable either.
And they're not predictable.
No, they're not.
Now, how many students do you get in this class?
Well, right now, we usually get around 90 to 100 or a little bit more. The enrollment's open right now, and we just crossed over 90, which is large for just an elective class, in the summer.
Because what we're seeing, I think, is that as online education, my fear is that we will kill it if we don't make it more appealing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned because, Keesa, you're an instructional designer. You know that the challenge is there are so many things you can do spontaneously in a classroom that you have to pre-plan when you're doing something online.
Well, yeah, online, I feel that we have to look at online from a different lens because it is correct. It's a new environment, but it's an immersive environment as well. I mean, it's different elements that can evoke something in you, especially when it comes to learning. As if you could see, like from Twitter, it's nothing but a feed of information, and you're getting a lot of information at once, but you're feeding that's feeding into your brain and your mind and your learning. So I do believe our course, which is an immersive course, it utilizes all those elements. It utilizes sound, it utilizes video, it utilizes text, it utilizes active learning. It utilizes motivation and power of interest and choice and gaming. So that's why we call it, it's an immersive course.
Now, do they play roles, or do those roles organically develop?
Oh, that's a good question, Glenn.
Well, what we're actually calling this, it's because it's actually a different approach to education, and I'll get to the answer there. I just want to say that I think one of the most fundamental ways that we've always passed along what's important from one generation to the next is in the telling of a story. Mm-hmm. And what this approach does, we call it MOLLE, Multimedia Online Learning Immersive Experience, where we weave a narrative, we weave the academic content right into a narrative. And so it becomes a story. And in that story, the students, as Keesa is saying, they become immersed, where they actually take on roles within the story. But it's almost like organic because they're placed in survival groups. It's like if one of the things about a disaster or catastrophe, if it happens, we're with who we're with and we're where we are, wherever that is. We may want to be with family and friends or, our ideal survival team.
What happens if you're out on the road?
What happens if you're on the road, you're at a wedding,
You're in
at
the library,
work, wherever it might be. And so students find out where they are, and we have kind of a unique way to get them to discover where they are. They have to get to know one another quickly, and then they have to find out how are they going to survive. So they develop into roles almost like organically. They have to choose a leader. There has to be responsibilities, and they become a part of the story. And here's the interesting thing, is that as it goes along, they actually begin to write the story as well, write new kind of side stories that are coming off of this.
Like fan fiction almost, they go along with it. Yeah.
So are any of the characters bad guys?
It depends on the group. You know how
So I
we,
think I'd want a ringer in every one.
we
that's
were working
I bet
collaboratively.
there's some zingers in there.
well, there are. One of the complaints we've had, which is not uncommon when students work together in groups, is so and so's not pulling their weight in that. And in the course, I moved from being the teacher or the instructor to actually being part of the narrative.
Yeah.
I become a character in the story.
He's like a guide, a facilitator.
Yeah, and so I had a student contacted me as the instructor, but I remained in character, and I said to them, we are in the apocalypse. Things are not working. Just make this part of your story. And then what was encouraging was each week, the leaders of each group send in a video report. And they sent in a video report, and they said, Sam has disappeared. We don't know where he is. Yeah. He went out on a food run and he's gone.
He's gone, yeah.
He's dead.
Yeah.
So
could be that they got him. Mm-hmm.
To actually become part of the story. But here's the thing. Facts and figures and statistics, have their place and they're important. But at the end of the day, more than remembering facts, you oftentimes will forget those. You never forget a great story.
Well, that's what I was writing a book on. It was called Progressive Survivalism, because I was convinced that the solution is not to grab a shotgun and a can of beans and go to the bunker. It's really relying on the other people around you. And if you've built those relationships in advance, and I said whether it's an ice storm or whether it's going to be climate change disaster or an economic collapse, we're going to face some sort of catastrophe either for a small period of time or a long period of time. And the challenge is figuring out, there was a group called the Search Foundation, and they used to have teens map their communities in terms of assets and liabilities. Who's a nurse? Who's a person who has some law enforcement, so that we would have a list of assets in the neighborhood. So if there's an ice storm, who's the person that can pull your tooth if you don't have, you know?
I think we got some new content to add.
Oh, I've got a lot of stuff I can give you. And who has the liabilities? The Canadians have always been smart enough to say, you're on your own for the first 72. We aren't going to be able to get to most people in the first 72 hours.
That's right.
So you need to figure out what to do during those. We might be able to help you afterwards. But I think Americans have always felt that we have this great social safety net that's going to save us immediately, but they're really not there.
Exactly. And that's one of the overarching goals of the course, is to create better first responders, like to instill some sort of awareness that these things can happen. Yeah. What would you do? Like, what's your disaster plan? We ask questions like, do you know what a disaster plan is? Do you have one? Have you ever created one? And a lot of people, when we did the survey the second time around, believe that it was maybe like 80% that said no, we never done it.
They don't have an emergency, kit or anything like that. But Bonnie, you hit at what the very heart of the message is. Oftentimes when I get the question, well, what weapon should I? What's the best weapon for the zombie apocalypse? A
Who's
katana, food. How do you, and at the heart of this course is really about how important relationships are. Exactly what you said.
Mm-hmm.
The best asset that you can take into a catastrophic situation are those relationships, and we can't depend upon or wait upon someone to come and rescue us. In this narrative and in this story, we outlined
At that Meijer store, any more than one pallet of water, right?
what a job.
What a job. And he said he was watching civilization come close to unravel right before his eyes because people did not want to go home with just one 12-pack of water. They wanted to be able to grab as much as they could. And there was panic starting to set in. So how does your course, do you actually integrate panic into this and what happens when people panic? What strategies do you give them?
Well, one of the things is the course by design is chaotic. It doesn't run on you come to class at 10:20 and it goes to 11:40. We have things happening all throughout it could be during the day, it could be in the middle of the night, it could be at any point. That's why it's not a class for someone who just wants to go self-paced. This thing is just round the clock.
It doesn't have a syllabus.
There's synchronous and asynchronous, so you have to be available during certain chat times and things like that. Is that how it works?
Well, no, not even that.
They have to figure out how they're going to communicate.
Oh, I see.
We open up the platform and we allow them to we give them discussion prompts, but they have to decide when they're going to talk. They have to decide what they're going to say collectively as a group.
Do they have to report?
Yeah, they have to send in one report that the group leader does. Because
I wouldn't want you to know what I was doing.
Well,
if I was into surviving, you wouldn't hear from me.
Well, that's an interesting thing. We do have
you do have a class.
We do have kind of a scenario. Each week we have like a video scenario that they watch, and then they place themselves in that, and they have to decide what to do. Like for instance, one of them is when after a week or so of being bunkered down in the middle of the night, they start hearing this pounding. Let me in. They're coming, and then it cuts off, and the groups have to decide individually what are we going to do and why.
Right.
And then the leader has to put that together. And then they have to report on that. Did they let that person in? Did they send somebody out to check it out? So we try to put them in those tense, chaotic.
Not in my group.
And then
I've seen too many of those movies.
Keesa came up
He's
with
the renegade.
I'll get to a scenario about you in a second. That's something we had like you. But Keesa came up with a great resource. I'll let her tell you about where individuals can reflect upon the process. You want to tell them about the journal?
Diary or journal.
Yes,
Yeah.
we wanted some reflective piece where students we can actually see some writing on their personal standpoint on where they're
Journaling
at.
kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a great
survival journal.
Yeah, we called it a survival journal, but we use Penzu. It's a free online journal, but we use Penzu Classroom, which allowed us to kind of be more in contact with the student to be able to see their work. And the students loved it. I mean, they really got immersed into creating their stories from their standpoint on where they were at. We were thinking that maybe it was going to be more formal, but it was a mix of formal and informal because they became part of the story. A lot of people didn't agree with some of the things that happened. Some people did. Some people were very intimate about their emotions and feelings, like I don't feel like I should have to do this. And you know, it's really interesting because I feel like we were learning as well as we were going along the journey where they were learning. We were learning too.
And the video reports, even though we didn't give them a lot of guidelines because we wanted just to keep it broad so people and flexible so people could be creative. And right from the beginning, we began to get the video reports where the group leaders themselves, you'd see darkness and shadows and noises, and this is group leader number 3 reporting from the basement of People's Church. You know, we're down to our last 3 gallons of water.
Cool.
And one group even went outside, and they went outside of their thing, and they actually filmed, and they filmed themselves going through a forest, and they had somebody dress up like a zombie and try to attack them, but. Them taking that part and getting invested in the story, and the requirement was that then they just needed, it had no magical thinking, it had to become part of the narrative that they added to. But there was, Bill, I want to get to your point here. There's a point when they have to kind of make a decision with some factors that come in whether they're going to move or not, somewhat towards the end. One time, well before that, all of a sudden we get a report from one of the group leaders. And this is what made me think of you. And they said, "We're out of here. We're running left. We're heading north." It's like, what?
So that's the ultimate survivor. That would be Bill. He'd be leading
There he
that
is.
pack that would
You get ahead of the pack.
That's right.
You know, interesting, and we've talked about this a little bit, Glenn. There's a book out that came out last year. It's called Station 11, and it's about an end-of-the-world situation. Everybody dies of the flu in very few hours, and there's just pockets of people around the world. And this group of survivors forms a touring Shakespearean group. And the concept is that they're preserving the arts. That's what
Yeah.
they do. So what it gets down to is if you had nothing, what do you take with you?
Yes.
Right.
And they
That's a
took
great
art.
idea.
They took art and Shakespeare with them, and they present plays. They thought that was the most important thing. They run into a guy who has created a museum. This all takes place in Michigan, at one of our abandoned Air Force bases, and he's creating a museum of things we used to have, cell phones, all those kinds of things. It was really kind of fun. It was just, but it's the same kind of feeling. Those situations occur in this book too. And
Yeah. And originally,
I need to get in. This is LCC Radio WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Keesa Johnson, who is an instructional designer, and also with Glenn Stutzky of the School of Social Work, about his online class Zombie Apocalypse, which occurs in the summers here at Michigan State University, although we're here at LCC. But I wanted to tell you that one of the things you said that resonated with me was in 1998 I created a class on community policing online, first online class for police. And I wanted to beta test it, so I recruited some people that I knew, and I had 2 people in Canada, 1 in London, 1 in Ireland. I had a woman captain of the South African police force in Johannesburg, and I had 5 people spread across the United States. And I was thinking about having live chat once a week, and I thought that's not going to work. They're spread all over the world, different time zones, all sorts of problems. So I said, well, we won't have live chat. 3 weeks into the 6-week course, the friend that I knew from Canada emailed me, and he said, "We think it's time we should let you know we've been meeting secretly." He said, "We got so wrapped up in this, we wanted to talk with each other, and the poor people in London and in Ireland have to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning to get in on our chat so that we can have the people in California." I mean, people really get into some of this.
People do. In fact, we have a person in China, a student in China, who wants to join the class this summer. And a high school student wrote me from Vietnam. he had heard about the course, and he's asked if he can be part of it. And so I want to tell you that for the first time this summer, we finally have figured out a way to open up the course to just any member of the general public in any country.
Wow.
We're running it through our non-credit registration system. So, there are people who wanted, from the beginning, I had emergency management, people who wanted to take it, state police, retired military, but they don't need a degree, they didn't want to pay the prices you pay for the credits. And so now for $500 instead of $1,500 or $1,600, anyone can take the course, get the same content. We'll have, some kind of certificate or something like that, but they won't have to pay for the degree. So we're looking at hoping that will open it up to, other people. In fact, I did have one woman who was a woman who wrote me, and she said, I'm going to get that, I don't know if she did it or not, she says, I'm going to get that as my Christmas gift for my father.
Really?
How many total hours do you think are involved in this?
Well, you mean
in
it's a
preparing it, or-
7-week course. Yeah, 7 weeks.
But how many hours per week?
You
Well,
mean
now
that the student has to put in?
There's traditional work you do,
Right.
reading, some writing,
Research.
some quizzes and things like that. There's individual tasks that you can do anytime that it fits your schedule. And then we call them individual survival tasks. And then there's the group survival task where you have to work together with the group on the issues that are presented that week. But what would you have a guess?
I would be probably between like 8
to
hours.
10?
Yep, 8 to 10 hours. You know.
Each week?
Glenn, I should let you know that we've opened up the cap on the World of Media class that I teach online in the summers, and I now have 240 students.
Wow.
Nice.
And that is 90% of them are in China. And one of the challenges that we face is I had to redo all 14 of my videos last year because they can't see YouTube.
We had that.
ran into that same thing as well.
You have to find out that they can't access certain textbooks. They're not accessible there. So fortunately, the textbook that we're using, they actually have an office in China now where they're willing to sell Chinese textbooks in Chinese in China to the students,
Wonderful.
which is quite amazing.
That is amazing.
But what I have become concerned about, and I think this is something that I'd like to talk to you because you call this the Z team, the people that work with you,
Yeah.
because this takes so much prep work up front. It's just
Yes.
astronomical. One of the challenges that universities have is they're used to, I once got a course assigned to me 3 days after the semester started, and it was a course I hadn't taught before. So, that can happen. People
Yeah.
have to quickly be able to get up to speed on something. Online courses, you can just give readings and tests every week, and you can bore the bejesus out of people, or you can really do it well, and you can really have engaging, wonderful classes. I just saw a video today that teaches chemistry by showing people at a cocktail party wearing chemical symbols, and I will forever now remember that noble gases don't bond, because they had 3 guys standing in the back of the room who just looked snotty and wouldn't talk to each other. And that is so cool, and I'm never going to forget that noble gases don't bond. But that takes time to do that video.
It really does.
How much time do you put in up front?
This has been an iterative development for us, and I must say that if you're thinking about developing an immersive type course like this, it's not an 8 to 5 thing.
And it's not an individual thing.
No.
You need a team to do it.
You need a team.
Yes.
And, besides the instructor, instructional designers, one of the members of the Z team who's off right now on family leave is our beloved Zombrarian, Haley Mooney. And she's part of the team effort. And in fact, let me just say one quick thing about librarians. And I would say this to any instructor, I don't care whether you have a PhD or whatever. Relationship, having a librarian involved with your classes already become smarter. Because librarians are smarter than you. And we wanted to have a librarian not just come at the beginning of our course, here's the library resources, but Haley's the first embedded Zombrarian. She's available on an ongoing basis. She has a Twitter account. She helps provide not just only the required readings, but additional resources, and she might tweet out in the middle of the night a resource that might be helpful to the students and that.
One of the things I did in '98, because we didn't have video yet, we couldn't do video lectures, but there are things we could do we're still not doing. I had in that community policing course, anytime you ran into one of the terms that were specific to what we were doing, like community policing, it was a hot link to a little pop-up window, and not only did it give you a definition, it often gave you a little quiz or game. And I mean, that was so valuable, and it's the kind of thing, I'm still worried that we are not taking anywhere near full advantage of what can be done online in most of the classes.
Definitely.
How can we, Keesha, where are universities going to get the resources to do this? Because they just say to a prof who has no tech skills too often, you know, gee, just teach this online.
That would be, that's a big question, because you would really have to look at how you approach course creation in a different way.
Yeah.
It would have to be a team approach, a design-based approach, and right now it's kind of like siloed in a way where, you know, it's the instructor and they have to find out how to do this. And, you know, for some instructors, it's probably a little easier because that may be something they really like to do. But then here at MSU, we have something where we have learned that, where we're there to help support it. But even then, for something as immersive as this, we came together because we had certain passions that tied us together with this. So,
but you don't have the capacity to do 300-400 courses in the summer for different departments.
No. Something like this took a lot of time, like personal investment for us. But it was well worth it because here we are with a new learning model. But this learning model can be adapted, but it has to be a new approach on how you create these type of courses.
You have to think differently, and as an instructor, you have to be willing to give up power.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not necessarily that easy. I mean,
every faculty person's so keen to do that.
And especially like, I mean, I sincerely consider Keesa and Christopher Irvin, who also wasn't able to be here, but another instructional designer. I do not see them in any way as support staff. It's not Glenn and his team. We're co-educators, co-creators, and I also see that the same way as also with the librarians. They're not just someone to, oh, hey librarian, I need 3 books, for my students to read in this class and things like that.
And can I get copyright clearance on this?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you really have to look at team-based approach when you're designing courses like this for the immersion, for online, to have certain level of engagement for the student. Because what I've learned, and I'm going to stand on this, you teach what you learn, and you learn what you teach. If we weren't learning through the process, the students aren't going to learn.
I get back, Glenn, what are you seeing? Now your team is going out to other universities and other places giving talks on how other places can start to do this. Is there a general awareness among, I don't see higher ed as really understanding the online environment yet.
No, it's slowly happening. And yeah, we've been to one university down in West Virginia, brought us down for 2 days. Mm-hmm. They're starting their own Molly initiative, the University of Mary Washington. And they're looking at having 4 or 6 faculty members have a Molly. We're investing, with them to do that. We're doing some, Skype consultations, with people and going to some different conferences. But fundamentally, I feel like the paradigm for education, higher education, maybe I don't want to get off topic, but I think the sands are shifting.
Fast.
Very fast. And I think we may even see in the near future, in the next 10 years, even some of the brick and mortar schools, even before, forced to close. I mean, look, you've got Google, who just in the last couple of weeks has said no longer do you have to have a bachelor's degree, to apply to work here. Well, how is a university then really preparing them?
Part of the reason Google's doing that, I was at the Neoliberalism and Higher Ed conference, it's because they see that there's trillions of dollars in education that they'd like to have.
Well,
and so what they're really suggesting is that instead of paying, and you're absolutely right, why pay $1,500 for one 3-credit course when we could give you a certificate course online with a facilitator that's far more exciting and visually appealing, and we'll do it for $500 and we will accept your certificate.
Yeah.
Oops,
Yeah.
This is going to put real pressure on higher ed to continue its existing model. And that's why I was trying to tease out from you some of these budget issues. Because faculty sometimes feel they're being asked to do more with less all the time. And that it's so difficult for many of them to be able to go out and shoot their own video, do all of this. They don't have a team,
No.
and the university isn't going to provide them one. I see the opportunities for people to do almost startup online use, where they use these kinds of techniques in order to be able to teach things to people and do it at a more affordable certificate price.
Yeah, and you want people to be able to think and to think creatively and have a certain flexibility, in their mind, as opposed to regurgitating, a lecture or what's on a print. I'm not interested in students spewing back to me what I have shared or telling me what's in a book that I've assigned. I'll go just get the book and read it myself.
Right.
And especially in a time of disaster and catastrophe, you never have all the information, and it's chaotic and it's very messy, and you need people who can, think quickly on their feet, and they can be creative.
They
you
keep
think-
talking about critical thinking, and that's what it'll teach.
Do you think this class could be used at, say, higher elementary level?
Oh, yeah.
We've had some requests at the high school level, but
just
the
kids.
principals, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think they will love it.
Well,
They'd probably be very
Different
creative.
class, but the model works.
Yeah,
the
the
model.
well, that's one of the things when we went to the University of Mary Washington. We were there for 2 days for some extensive workshops and working with faculty. Some people might think, oh, well, of course you could have a narrative type approach with zombies, but we had people from the math department, from chemistry, from all these different things, who wanted to use the model
Yeah.
in it. And so we were working, with them to show them how it could possibly work if they would like to put in the time.
Yeah, and I believe that the model, it's a mixture of like informal and formal assessment. And we do have formal assessments. We have some quizzes. But the other way we were gauging and learning was what they were sharing through their journals, what they were sharing with how they figured things out, the discussion forums, the digital storytelling, how they share with us their whole learning journey, because within the course they're creating their own learning journey.
Yes.
We're setting up an environment for them to learn. It's not just the content, it's an environment that they will soon become lifelong learners, that they're picking up these type of skills.
I want to thank both of you so much for coming in, because I think we're on the cusp of a real revolution here. And Glenn, you and Keesha are going to be at the forefront of this. We'll be returning to this topic often. This is Lansing Online News Radio on LCC Radio WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We've been talking with Glenn Stutzky and Keesa Johnson from Michigan State University about zombie apocalypse. And we'll see you next Monday night at 7 o'clock if the zombies don't get us.
All right.
We'll see you then.
All right.